Hey guys, I'm ready to give you a lecture on Europe's conquest of the Americas. So let's start with Christopher Columbus. You remember Ferdinand and Isabella were really jealous of Portugal and how rich they had gotten. Ferdinand and Isabella had recently kicked all the Jews out of Spain, so they had lost all their money. Christopher Columbus had been like, hey, I can make you rich. I'm going to sail west to get east, and I'm going to make you rich by getting to the Spice Islands. But oh, he actually hit the Caribbean islands. And we're starting right there. So he met with the Tainos well, he called them Indians because he thought he was in the Indies. Met with the Tainos Indians. He called them Indians. Once again, he thought he was in the East Indies, so he was calling them Indians. Met with the Tainos Indians, and they were so nice to him and all his people. So nice. Giving them food, giving them clothing. An actual quote from Chris Columbus was, "The people were generous with what they have to such a degree as no one would believe but he who had seen it." Meaning, the Tainos Indians were so kind and so generous that you wouldn't even believe it unless you had seen it. That's how generous these people were. And how did the Spanish react to that? They were awful to them. They were mean and horrible and awful to the Tainos Indians. They stole gold from them. They took their land from them. They not only took their gold from them, they made the Indians go out and find more gold and bring it to them. And they said, you must go get this amount of gold. Go get X amount of gold for me every day. And if they didn't get that amount of gold for them, they beat them, tortured them, and sometimes even killed them. Men, women, children, they were horrible to the Indians. They were really mean to them. So they started on the island of what they called Hispaniola, which is what we now call the Dominican Republic and Haiti. This island right here, see how there's a line right here through the middle of it? This is Haiti on the left and Dominican Republic on the right. One island, two nations. Haiti on the west, Dominican Republic on the right. But at the time, they called this island Hispaniola. And then they went over to this island called Puerto Rico, and then they went to this island, Cuba. So they took over all these islands here, and they were mean, awful, horrible to the native peoples that lived there. And they also did this other horrible thing that they didn't even know they were doing. They spread disease. They spread measles, smallpox, and influenza without even knowing they were doing it, because they had, like, some people know they have diseases, and then there are other people that are asymptomatic. That's a word that I bet, I mean, maybe some of you knew this word, but I bet a year ago, most of you had never even heard this word before. But I bet now all of you have heard this word, and that's because we have a pandemic going on right now. Now you all know this word because some of you that are actually coming to school in the building right now, you all know there is a teeny tiny, slight little possibility that you actually might have the virus and you could be spreading it, because there are some people that are asymptomatic. There are some people that have COVID-19 but never actually show any symptoms at all. Never cough, never sneeze, never have a sore throat, never have a fever, never have anything, but actually have the virus inside them and spread the illness to other people, but they don't know it. Well, there's the exact same thing with other sicknesses. And so we're talking back in the 1400s. Let's go back to my lecture, Europe's Conquest of the Americas. Back when this was happening, when Christopher Columbus and his people had gone to the Americas, let's go to a map. Let's shrink this map down. There were diseases in this part of the world that absolutely did not exist here. The diseases from here had never, ever been in this part of the world ever before, had never been here. Well, asymptomatic people that didn't even know they had the sickness, came over here and brought the illness with them, and then spread the sickness to people that didn't have any kind of immunity at all. And so the sickness rapidly spread, and villages, entire villages were wiped out in a very, very short period of time. We're talking really just a few years. Entire populations of villages were gone. In these islands, and if I make it bigger, look at how many islands there are. When I go bigger, there are lots and lots and lots of islands in the Caribbean. We're talking 90%. 90% of the population of the Caribbean dead. 90%. Between slavery, the Europeans working them to death to pan for gold and dig for silver, gold and silver, and sickness, disease, 90% of those islands were dead. This was rough. Okay, so that's my telling of this story. Now went further west, let me go back to the map. So this is where Christopher Columbus and his people were. Other people went even further west and came over to the Americas. So this guy, Hernan Cortez, came over to Mexico, came over this way. He had heard stories of cities of gold over here. So he came this way and heard of this city, Tenochtitlan. Don't worry, I'm going to write that down for you. So Hernan Cortez was a Spaniard. And he had heard of cities of gold and riches. So with 600 men, 16 horses, and a few cannons, he headed toward the city of Tenochtitlan. That's Tenochtitlan. Say it again. Tenochtitlan. 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 Okay, that's the Aztec capital. So the Aztecs were the people that lived in this central region of Mexico at the time. All right, so the Aztec leader was a guy named Moctezuma. And I'm going to take a tiny little break and talk to you about this guy's name. You probably learned about this guy in middle school, but there's a possibility you heard his name pronounced differently. You may have heard his name pronounced Montezuma. There's been a change recently. His name is an Aztec name. And in the Aztec language, it's not actually pronounced Moctezuma or Montezuma. It's pronounced slightly differently. I don't speak Aztec and I don't know exactly how it's pronounced. But in Spanish, when the Spanish pronounced his name, they changed it to Montezuma. And now people are trying to be more correct, and they're trying to pronounce his name closer to how it would have actually been pronounced in his own language, and how his name would have been pronounced in Aztec is closer to Moctezuma. And so the whole reason that I'm saying all of this is, if you ever hear someone say Montezuma or Moctezuma, they're talking about the exact same person. I want you to make sure and know that Montezuma and Moctezuma are the exact same person. Don't worry about it. Don't go like, oh my goodness, are they talking about two different people? Don't worry about it. If you're watching a documentary, if you see it in a book, if you move on and you go on to college and your professor says Montezuma, but you hear me saying Moctezuma, whatever, just know we're talking about the exact same person. But there's a move now in academics to say Moctezuma, like your actual book, your book says Moctezuma, and it's a new book. The 12-year, I also teach 12-year-old cultural studies, but the 12-year-old cultural studies is an older book and it still says Montezuma. But next year, the 12-year-old cultural studies book is getting upgraded and it's new. And I'm sure that next year, the cultural studies book will say Moctezuma. So as the books get newer, they're all going to change. So, okay, back to class. I just really, really, really like any of your teachers. If your teacher is older than me, your teacher's going to say Montezuma. If your teacher is my age or younger than me, they're going to say Moctezuma. Okay, so back to the story. This is an interesting story. Okay, so Hernan Cortez had heard these stories of these cities of gold. And the ruler of the Aztecs heard that these white men were coming, but they had never seen white people before. Remember, we're talking about all the way across the ocean. People that lived here, they had never seen white people before. And so they were kind of freaked out. They were like, we don't know what's happening. White people are coming. Well, in ancient Aztec folklore, like in their religious stories, they had these ancient religious stories that there was a god that was angry with them. They had an angry God that was mad at them. And this God had promised to one day was going to come back and seek vengeance on them. Why the God is seeking vengeance is a very, very long story that I don't really have to tell you, but just know that the God was going to come back and punish them for something that the people had done a long, long, long time ago. And like no one that was alive today had actually done anything to this God. It was a long, long time ago, the people had done something wrong. This God had said that he was going to come and punish the people, but the God himself was white. And so this Aztec leader was afraid that Hernan Cortez was this God coming to punish them. And so Moctezuma, to try to appease the God, sent riches. Moctezuma was sending gold and jewels and all kinds of presents and gifts to Hernan Cortez to try to appease him. So he was sending gifts to the God thinking if I send gifts to this god, then it'll make the god happy and he'll leave us alone. But Hernan Cortez was like, hey, obviously he is really rich. He's sending us all these gifts. And so Moctezuma is actually encouraging Cortez to keep coming. He thinks he's appeasing this god and making the god go away and leave him alone. But really what he's doing is he's encouraging Cortez to keep coming. Also, while Cortez is moving along, he finds out that Moctezuma is a mean, cruel ruler. Cortez finds out that the other native tribes around, none of them like the Aztecs. The Aztecs are cruel, dominant rulers around. They rule in a mean, with an iron fist. They're really, really mean. They make everybody else obey them out of cruelty. If everybody doesn't follow their rules, they kill them. And so when Cortez says, hey, we're going to go fight the Aztecs, do you want to join us? Everybody's like, of course we'll join you. And so even though Cortez only has 600 of his own men, he's gaining this whole army of other Native Americans that are willing to fight the Aztecs with him. So he's gaining this army, and so he shows up at Tenochtitlan, which is a beautiful city. Let me show you. I should have had it pulled up, sorry. Tenochtitlan. Images. This is what Tenochtitlan looked like at the time. This was beautiful. I mean, look at how gorgeous it would have been in the 1400s. This is gorgeous. So they walk up. Now, remember, put yourself in the state of mind of Moctezuma. Moctezuma thinks this is an angry, angry God that has come to seek vengeance against his people. And Cortez thinks that he's here to take over a super rich city. So Moctezuma is all cowardly and like coy and sweet and gentle and like, here, take this gold, take this fruit, being really, really sweet and gentle and kind and trying to be as kind and nice to Cortez as he can. And everything that they're getting along, and everybody's being really, really sweet and kind, and everybody's really, really cool for a while. But then after a little while, things start to get kind of tense. And then Cortez just loses his patience and throws Moctezuma in prison. And when Moctezuma is imprisoned, his people rise up to try to break him out of prison. And then there's a big fight, and Cortez and all of the other Native American tribes that are with him rise up and conquer the Aztecs. and they completely destroy Tenochtitlan, and it's left in ruins. And then the Spaniards rebuild a new city of their own and name it Mexico City. And that is today. Mexico City. Today. There it is. Mexico City. This is Mexico City today is built on the ruins of Tenochtitlan. And then we have one more story. So Cortez's great success inspired other conquistadors. I think I forgot to say that conquistador is the Spanish word for conqueror. Conquistador is the Spanish word for conqueror. So sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Just know this word, conquistador. Cortez had so much luck in Mexico. This guy, Pizarro, also from Spain, in the year 1532, wanted to go conquer the Incan people. The Incans were here in Peru. So Columbus was here on these islands. He was a conquistador. So, okay, he was from here in Spain. They came over this way. Columbus was here. Then they got excited when we're like, well, let's go further west. Hernan Cortez came over here. Now this guy Pizarro had heard that there were even more riches down here. He had heard about this amazing, amazing city down here in Peru. So he came down here to conquer the Incans, the Incan people. So he came down, and the Incans were led by a guy named Atahualpa. Atahualpa. And he conquered and then killed Atahualpa. After he killed Atahualpa, he established a city called Lima. And Lima is still today the capital of Peru, right here. Lima is the capital of Peru. Let's see here. Spanish people came all through here and conquered a whole bunch of this land. They came all through here and took over this land. And then they forced the native people in here to mine gold and silver, and they shipped it back to Spain, making Spain at this time the wealthiest country of all of Europe. And I've had two of you from this class have mentioned in the past couple of days, you've mentioned that India and China have spices, and that you think that India and China should be rich because of their spices. Let me explain to you why it doesn't necessarily mean that India and China are rich because they have spices. I'll make it clear, hopefully, because Spain became the richest nation in all of Europe because Peru and Mexico had gold and silver. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Peru and Mexico have gold and silver. Why is Spain the richest country in Europe? Because they're forcing these people to mine those things. They're forcing these people to dig it up, and then they're taking it from them and claiming it as their own and using it, and then it's theirs. Well, that's the same thing they were doing. They're coming over here and buying the spices for pennies and then taking it back and selling it for lots and lots and lots and lots of money. They can, I'll put it in tenge for you. They can go to India and buy maybe 1 kilo of spices for, I don't know, let's say 500 tenge. And then they can go to Spain and sell those very same spices for 50,000 tenge. So that person in India made 500 tenge on the deal. But when they went to Spain, the person made 50,000 tenge. So the person in India isn't really rich, but the person in Spain is really, really rich. And the same thing, well, even worse, in India, at least they made some money. The person in Mexico isn't making any money. They're just taking the gold from them. They're taking the silver from them without any money. That slavery, they're stealing it from them and then getting really, really, really rich off of it. So they made all their money off of going to getting the spices for really, really cheap over here, and then selling it here for lots of money, and then coming over here and getting precious metals for free, and then using it here for lots of money. That's where Spain and Portugal got all their money from. And yes, the native peoples here. So when Spain, Portugal too, but so when Spain and Portugal took over from Mexico down over here, it was very, very bad for the culture. So remember, in the Caribbean, 90% of the people died. Here on the mainland, tens of thousands of people died. Of the people that stayed alive, some people simply lost their will to fight. Some people simply just gave in. They said, okay, you win. They converted to Christianity. They quit wearing their traditional clothing. They quit speaking their traditional language. They just gave up. They started speaking Spanish. They started speaking Portuguese. They started wearing European clothing. They just did whatever the Spanish people wanted them to do. They said, okay, we'll just do whatever you want to do. We give up. But other people really, really fought. They struggled hard. They fought against the Spanish. They fought against them. They struggled hard. They really, really struggled hard to hold on to their traditional values, to hold on to their language, to hold on to their culture. And that fight still exists today. You can see it in their culture. It's still there. Okay, bye guys. See you soon.